I'm gonna be real with you. Most iron farms are either too slow, too overly complicated, or too difficult to reliably expand. And if you've ever built one, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. So, let's change that. I'm Mr. Chili, and today I'm going to be showing you a new type of iron farm that's both efficient, easy to expand, and not too complicated. Introducing the modular array for Golem ejection, or MAGE for short. Now for the MAGE, I developed two different kinds of spawning modules. The first kind is a 24 block spawning space for the tower and the Nova variant, and the second type I developed is the mini, which you will see right here, which has 48 spawning spaces per cell. Now the mini and the tower variants both have their perks. The tower variant features 2 villager cells per 24 spaces, making it possible to fit many more villager cells within a vertical area and overall being cheaper to construct, making it much more easy to expand this farm in all axes. However, the mini variant is the slightly more efficient variant, and this is the farm I would recommend for most players if they just want a single slice of spawning cells that they can stack however many times they feel is necessary. But back over to the tower variant, if you are a very technical player who wants a lot of iron per hour, the overall increased modularity and cheaper construction of this variant is going to be the variant for you. I'll show you later in this video how to hook up multiple of these modules or arrays, whatever you want to call them, horizontally so that they all can spawn iron golems off of one centralized clock. Now that you've dealt with me rambling about the differences of these two modules, let me show you how each of them actually work. Both modules use the same redstone system to activate the module and eject the golem horizontally. However, the mini module has the redstone in the center, whereas the tower module has the redstone on the edges. This is just because at a 90-degree angle, I cannot make the redstone fit in this 90-degree angle without making it much larger in this direction. Never seen that happen before. Without making it much larger in this direction and just making it much less practical to expand. However, both modules will detect the presence of a golem on this tripwire, and the golem can be detected on either of these blocks because their hitbox is over a 1 block radius. Once they're detected, this tripwire will obviously go down, activating this redstone line as well as this redstone line. The bottom redstone line will push the golems up into this top slime layer, allowing them to be pushed horizontally as well as adding some vertical momentum, just so that they can clear these blocks and move horizontally much quicker. The top redstone line, as I pretty much already explained, will activate and push these slime blocks out one, launching the golem horizontally. To show you that in action, this is what it would look like. Now for why the spawning spaces are configured in the way they are. To explain that, I'm going to use the carpet script iron golem spawning to better visualize this. As you can see, I have my 3 villagers placed right here, and they will have both a spawning bounding box as well as a iron golem detection bounding box. This one in green, as you can see, is labeled golem spawning. Any spawnable block within this cube is a valid place for these villagers to try to spawn a golem. You also have this white box, which is the golem detection zone. So any golem within this white bounding box will be detected by these villagers. If I go ahead and place a couple of blocks out here, you can see it is clear from the iron golem spawning platform. But if I place a golem, okay, he can see the zombie. Let me go ahead and block that off real quick. If I was to place an iron golem right here, you can see here any second there we go. The iron golem detection counter is going to reset. Now back to the spawning platforms. If you look at them, you can tell that we have built all these spawning platforms on the very edge of this green bounding box. The reason we do that is to keep the spawning platforms, the valve spawn spaces, as close to the bounding box as possible. What you'll see common in a lot of other iron farms is, since the golems are removed vertically from the bounding box, you'll build this spawn platform all the way at the bottom of the bounding box. However, for this farm, we want to remove them horizontally as fast as possible, which is why they're on the edge right here. Now, something you'll hear a lot when talking about iron farms is the time to kill. The time to kill is essentially just the time it takes from the iron golem spawning to its removal from the villager detection zone. In this farm, the time to kill is an average of 25 game ticks from iron golem spawn to its removal. One thing that I did, however, find very interesting in the development of this iron farm is the slime block that is actually closer to the edge of the bounding blocks is the slower time to kill. This is due to when the iron golem spawns, it just simply is not pushed as well by this slime block, leading it to a slower time to kill. The time to kill on this slime block right here is 26 game ticks, whereas the slime block right here is 24, giving us about an average of 25 game ticks to its removal. One important thing to note with time to kill is when the villagers are actually sleeping, you'll see that their bounding boxes change from the original position they were in. They will all move outwards by 1 block, and then the rightmost villager will move outwards this way by 1 block, and the leftmost villager will move this way by 1 block. The reason this entire bounding box moves is the villager detection boxes are calculated based off of their head position, which when they're all standing right here will remain the same, but when they are actively sleeping will move by 1 block. Due to this movement of 1 block, the actual iron golem detection boxes do slightly shift. So in very, very rare cases at night, if a villager falls asleep right after they spawned an iron golem, it can lead to a slight increase in the time to kill for 1 spawning attempt per night. This new time to kill will be about 33 game ticks. Now let's briefly go over the collection system before we get into my favorite part of the farm, the actual clock. For the collection system, we have 3 separate kill chambers that you can see right here. All 3 of them are just outside the iron golem detection box to eliminate the concern of an iron golem accidentally clipping into this detection box while they're being removed. The reason I opted for 3 separate kill chambers on the mini and 2 separate kill chambers on the tower is I want to remove the golems as quickly as possible to cut down on lag and keep this iron farm as lag free as possible. Once they're removed, the items then will go to a centralized location for collection. Later, I will show you ways to further cut down on lag in the Nova variant of this farm and the system that I came up for that. Now onto the redstone clock. I initially started this farm out based off of an etho hopper clock, and when I tested the rates, I got around 425 iron ingots per hour. At face value, this seems like a really good rate, as it is much faster than most iron farms on YouTube. However, the reason it is much faster has nothing to do with the etho hopper clock I was using and everything to do with this new updated spawning platform design that I have. The spawning platform at 25 game ticks removes iron golems far faster than a traditional water stream. Knowing this, I decided I could improve the rates even more. That's when I came upon this factorial clock design you see here in front of you that another YouTube creator made. Nico Has Lost actually talked about this in his Iron Farm video, and if you haven't checked it out and want a deeper understanding of the way iron farms work in general, I highly recommend the video. I'll link it down below in the description. However, back to the clock. After building this clock and attaching it to my iron farm, I retested the rates and found a pretty significant increase with averaging 448.9 iron ingots per hour, which I was pretty happy with.
However, I wondered, is there a way to increase the rates further? That's when I came up with the current clock for my iron farm. Now this clock uses, as far as I'm aware, a pretty new system where it will detect a villager sleeping to start the clock. It's nothing fancy past this, it's just simply a pulse extender that will flip this trapdoor up and down to activate the zombie. But I immediately found that the problem with this farm is, or with this clock design, is it will detect the villager entering and exiting the bed, causing it to be activated twice a day instead of the one time I was desiring, leading to you missing 2 spawning attempts per day. The fix for this, however, is pretty simple. I just added this sticky piston and this observer in so that the first time the villager interacts with the bed, it will pull the observer in, activating the pulse extender, and the second time when the villager wakes up, it will push the observer back out, causing it to not trigger the pulse extender. I played around with making a much more precise system for the pulse extender to where it's only exactly on one spawning attempt. But the problem I found with that is in very rare cases, you could cause a villager not to sleep for whatever reason, and that would cause a full 20-minute cycle of the villager not spawning any iron golems. So I decided I'd just stick with a simple 10-second pulse extender to eliminate that possibility. After running my initial test, I found that this system is actually about as good as you could possibly do for a single dimension iron farm. I ended up getting about 474 iron ingots per hour, which I was ecstatic about. If you're unsure of why I was so ecstatic about the 474 iron ingots per hour, it's because the maximum theoretical rate of an iron farm is 480 iron ingots per hour. Once rounding up 474, that's about a 99% of the max efficiency, which for a single dimension iron farm is, in my opinion, very impressive. With this said, if anybody does happen to know of another single dimension iron farm that achieves this rate of efficiency, please let me know in the comments down below. Now, as a disclaimer, I do want to say that this 474 iron ingots per hour only applies to the mini version of this farm. It does not apply to the tower variant. This is just due to there being less spawning spaces and a lower likelihood of spawn attempts being met. The reason for this mainly comes down to the amount of valid spawning spaces. With the mini having 48 valid spawning spaces, once you do the math, this leads to about a 99.8% spawn success likelihood. And with the tower variant only having 24 spawning spaces, this leads to a 94.8% spawn likelihood. This actually makes a pretty big difference in overall rates from the mini to the tower, with the mini getting that 474 iron ingots per hour, and the tower variant actually only getting about 450 to 460 iron ingots per hour. It's also worth noting that this gets further reduced when you start stacking the tower variant and attaching multiple modules next to each other in horizontal space, due to the iron golems potentially colliding with each other if they were to spawn in the same spawn cells and then have a collision. But with that said, that pretty much sums up how the mini and the tower variant both work. So now I'm going to go ahead and hop over to the Nova farm and show you some of the differences in redstone and collection. All right, now we're over here at the Nova farm, and the first thing I want to point out is obviously this is a much bigger farm with intersecting iron golems, so the middle kill chambers will be much larger. The reason they're larger is as iron golems fall, they do often collide with each other, and we don't want them to miss this kill chamber, so I ended up making it a few blocks wider, and I also pushed it below the bottom module's iron golem detection box so that there's no chance of them being detected when they're being killed, and there's also no chance of them completely missing this kill chamber and falling down below. The next thing worth noting is I have these stonecutters placed strategically throughout the collection system. If you haven't seen this before, the reason for this is actually pretty simple. As iron ingots flow through the collection system, if you have, say, 2 stacks of iron ingots, both of 4 iron ingots, and they flow down through here, upon colliding with the stonecutter, they will be lined up for long enough to stack with each other, making a single set of 8 iron ingots instead of 2 separate sets of 4 iron ingots. The reason this is important is the further you reduce the amount of total items in this collection as far as entities, the more you're going to reduce the MSPT and the overall lag of this farm. We want to do this anywhere we can in this farm to basically just cut down on the overall lag, making this farm be able to be built more modules out. In the schematic, you will find a stonecutter right here before the collection system. I included it right here just in case you did want to move your collection system somewhere else in the farm and you wanted the water stream to continue on. You could place the stonecutter here to further reduce the amount of entities. However, if you are completely fine with your collection system being right here, which is where I have it in my version in my survival world, you can break that stonecutter because it's pretty much irrelevant. Now we move on to the wiring of the Nova farm. In this example, I do still have this factorial clock hooked up. However, the reason for this is just so the trapdoor activates more often, allowing me to easier show you what's going on here. So as you can see, just like the other 2 variants, the trapdoor will be receiving an input from the redstone clock, toggling it on and off, which can be read up the scaffolding line for raising and lowering the zombie. However, what's different about this is we take that signal from the observer and we carry it down this instant wire line to each other module. In order to take this pulse and turn it into a toggleable system, we detect the pulse with this copper bulb, which has a value of either 1 or 0 that the comparator can read and send it to this trapdoor. As you can see, just due to the spacing, this one is not instant wired. However, this isn't really a problem. You don't need them all to activate within the exact same tick. But we'll carry this down this instant wire line and then off to the left and right, and we can continue this on as many times as we please, stacking it further horizontally or further this direction as many times as we please. Now for the Nova, I only ended up stacking this 7 modules high. The reason for that is at about Y level 60, you can start this farm, and then 7 modules will extend up to Y 256. In this creative world, I do have it offset by about 25 blocks, but in your survival world, if you build it at about Y level 60, you'll still be able to fit 7 modules in before you reach the build height. The reason I did this being it's much easier to build this farm when you don't have to worry about clearing out a lot of terrain, and I did this with the sea level in mind so that you can avoid clearing out any terrain to build this farm if you don't want to. However, if you're going to build this farm in a perimeter, you could add on many more villager spawning cells in the vertical space. You would just have to expand the actual kill chamber a little bit because you just wouldn't have room to fit them and you'd start clipping golems out. One thing I do want to visualize real quick is right here I have 2 mini modules based off of the same zombie. And if I go ahead and I turn the AI tracker back on for the villager, you'll see that the spawning spaces, as well as more importantly, the detection spaces actually collide. You could 100% build a farm like this and it would work perfectly fine. However, the thing that bothers me with this is the efficiency is significantly reduced due to this villager cell detecting this villager's iron golems in most cases. This is exactly why the more efficient, per se, module system that I developed is not used in the larger scale farms, and I elected to use the tower variant. For anybody who wants to build one of these 3 farms in their survival world, I've included the material list for each of them in the video description below. But on to schematics. Upon downloading the schematic, you will find for each variant, there's going to be 2 separate schematics. You're going to have the base and the actual module. And then for the Nova, you will have 4 separate schematics. 1 schematic for the collection system, 1 schematic for the wiring, and 1 schematic for the actual modules themselves, as well as a 4th schematic that's just the entire farm in 1 schematic, so that you can build it however you see fit. The reason I decided to make 2 separate schematics for each of the mini and the tower variants is to basically just increase the modularity of the farm for you, the viewer. If you want to just have 1 villager cell for the mini per se, you could just build the collection and the first cell, aka the base schematic. However, if you wanted to stack this 2, 3, 4, 5, however many times you want, all you have to do is simply load in a new schematic, and that will be the mini module schematic. And then once it is loaded, you can see this orange piece of glass. You just have to align this orange piece of glass on top of this purple piece of glass, just like you see here, and everything will line up perfectly, allowing you to stack as many module schematics on top of each other as you want. Due to doing it this way, there is absolutely 0 constraints on you as to how you build this farm and when you build each module. You could start with just the base and then expand as you see necessary, or just build 4 modules right out of the gate, or just build 2 modules right out of the gate. It's completely up to you, and it's very easy to tile each of these schematics on top of each other. Now, I originally started editing this video about a week ago. I originally promised that I would have this video out 2 days ago from the time that I'm recording this right now. And due to this, I've elected to cut the build tutorial completely out of this video. So if I did happen to mention that earlier in the video, I am very sorry. However, with that said, I will be releasing a separate build tutorial for both the tower and the mini variants in the next couple of days. For any of you guys who enjoyed this video and liked the iron farm design or the mechanics we discussed, please consider subscribing. It would mean a lot to me, as I've really enjoyed making this video for y'all and hope to create many more in the future. Lastly, if you believe that anything I've said in this video is inaccurate or you have any suggestions to further improve these farms, please let me know down in the comments below. I'm not claiming to be a master redstoner. I'm just simply showing off my design, and I would love any suggestions or corrections so that I can get better. If you've made it this far, I just want to say I really appreciate you staying around to watch, and it means the world to me. But with that said, I will see you guys in the next one.